All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to an amazing Geek Vibes Live interview. I'm your host, Tia, and if you're probably a listener of mine, you know how much I love the show American Gods. And I'm going to keep talking about it because I have with me today the technical boy himself, Bruce Langley. How are you this morning, this evening, whenever someone's listening to this? How are you?
I'm very, very well, thank you. Cheers.
Awesome. I mean, we are 3 episodes until the end of season 3. I mean, how excited are you for fans to see what's left of this season?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of narrative threads woven so far in the season, and they get fairly well sewn up. I'm not saying they won't leave some questions with room to continue further, but yeah, a lot of stuff comes to a head. I mean, the Lakeside section, for example, is one of my favorite arcs in the book. I think it's most people who's read the book's one of their favorite arcs. We get to see what happens there. That's a big one for sure. We get to see a lot of stuff that happens with Ricky. And yeah, a lot of stuff with TB as well. There are some answers. Not saying there won't be more questions off the back of them, but I'm excited for people to see them.
Yeah, I was going to ask, just like dive right in there, and I'm sure that you can't really say much because it'll trek into spoiler zone, but what is Artifact 1? Because I think that's what like everyone's wondering. What the heck is Artifact 1?
How to explore it without it being a spoiler. I'm honest, I don't think there's really anything I could say that a clever person wouldn't be able to pick apart and learn something from. So I'm not really sure. All I will say it is something intrinsically important to Tech Boy. And he obviously, as we've seen, has no idea about it. He's entirely ignorant about it, but it is something very, very important to him.
Yeah, I'm certainly excited to see where that leads to. It's a very mysterious part of the story. But I wanted to ask, Technical Boy has had such a transformation. We saw him in season 1 as kind of, I would say, maybe a little bit of a one-dimensional character, albeit like we love Tech because we love to hate him in a sense. But I mean, starting in season 2, you had more backstory, you started feeling sympathy for him. In season 1, could you ever foresee that Tech Boy's journey would lead to where it is in season 3?
That's an interesting question. Could I have seen it then? Well, here's the thing. As the actor, I knew that it was there. I knew that the potential was there to go there. I never went into this, developing and doing the work of the character, twirling a mustache, going, "Mwahaha, I shall ruin Shadow's life." I went in there knowing that ultimately this god, this iteration of technology, has ultimately done way more for the benefit of humanity than he has to the negative. It's just that he is constantly used as a tool to do not so nice things, whether or not he realizes that. So I knew the potential was there. I'm honestly really pleasantly surprised that particularly in this season, we were able to really push so far into who he is in his past and why he is the way he is. Because it really does flush him out and make him far more of a three-dimensional character. And you get to learn a bit about him. And look, I mean, no one's an asshole for no reason. And we get to see some of the reasons. And it's difficult to hate someone if you've walked a mile in their shoes. And I think this season with Tech Boy, we've certainly walked at least that mile.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you kind of touched upon that, because one of the best eye-opening scenes for Technical Boy being the way he is was in episode 5 back in the 1890s at the World's Fair with the magician Maximilian. That was totally unexpected, and it was so great.
Yeah.
I mean, how was it filming that scene for you?
I loved it. That was really great. Jeremy, the chap who played the magician, he's a lovely chap, so we got on very well anyway. But the setup for the scene was impressive just in itself. Like everything that the art department and set decks and all the rest of them had put together was beautiful. Particularly the automaton, that was wonderful. I loved shooting that scene. I didn't have to be, the director made it clear I didn't have to, but I asked to be inside the automaton while they were throwing popcorn and stuff in it. Like I wanted to I wanted to be in there while it was happening. It made more sense. It was so much fun. It was so lovely to get to explore that bit. Just seeing a more. I think people forget, despite 1890 was a fair time ago, but he's still very naive, and he's quite easily led if someone is convincing, charismatic, or forceful enough. And we're seeing that sort of in parallel to Shadow, actually. Shadow, I think, is starting to question a little more this time, like, hey, my dad's got a silver tongue, but maybe it's also dripping a little venom. Should I really be following him? Tech Boy is starting to get a little flavor of that as well, just in terms of he's not done too great with father figures. He really has. I just, on a sidebar, I kept a couple of those pieces of sugar glass that got smashed in. I still have a couple of those. So I'm probably going to get those framed at some point. I stole those. They were going to throw them away anyway. But I was like, these are mine forever. So yeah, I got those.
That's such a cool little thing. I love that scene, and I didn't even know what an automaton was until that scene, and then looked it up. So I just think that's cool with American Gods touching upon history that maybe you weren't so familiar with. But in that scene, what stood out to me, and it was a very small line, but that version of Technical Boy tells Maximilian that he is a son of temperance, which I also didn't know what that was. And then I looked it up, and it's a brotherhood that advocated against the consumption of alcohol. It's a two-part question. Is there any significance to that line in the long term? And do you think that's the reason why Technical Boy vapes now?
That's a good two-parter. Is there anything? Well, if for nothing else, it's significant in terms of highlighting his headspace at the time, that he didn't want anything to cloud or corrupt his mind, specifically in the terms of any form of intoxicant, because the main thing was the work. He wanted to do the work to create things that would change the world for the better. That was his main focus. In terms of why he vapes now, yes, you could see it as somewhat of a pushback against that and who he was, and sort of a fuck you to the world. It's also, in terms of synthetic toad skins and the references to all of that, it's also, in my opinion, I've viewed it as some kind of a reference, as a kind of anesthetic, or at the very least like an anti-inflammatory, in terms of taking the edge off what it's like to have all of the information of the internet constantly circulating through what amounts to his mind, and it's part artificial, it's part made of worship, and part of it is inexorably human. So I've also viewed it as kind of a fuck you, I'll do what I want. It was also, very current at the time, but it's also kind of a salve for the wound that is his consciousness. Just being conscious for him hurts. That's something important as well. Yeah,
I mean, when I first watched American Gods season 1, I hadn't read the book at that point. I read after season 1, and when Technical Boy says, it's synthetic toe skins, at first you kind of just throw that line away as something kind of peculiar, and then when you look up, it's like, oh, he's kind of technically getting high all the time.
Yeah, he is.
Which was interesting. We haven't seen Tech Boy vape in season 3. Is there a particular reason for that, or because I feel like he would need it now more than anything?
Yeah, I mean, arguably he would need it now more than ever, you could say. I think he's also in a position where he is. I mean, it's not to say that he hasn't been trying it off screen to try and deaden out all the stuff that he's going through. But the upshot is whether it's not working. Whatever it is that Bilquis has done to him / unlocked in him, whichever way you want to interpret it, shall be revealed. Yeah, it's powering through, and it's stuff he hasn't felt before. And I think it hurts so acutely for him. He recognizes that this wider problem needs to be fixed. He can't solve this with anesthetic. He needs to, well, as far as he sees it, he needs to correct the error in the code. He needs to tear out this corruption, whatever it is that's in him, without maybe realizing that stuff in him has been in there for a really long time, and might be a little more of him than anything else.
Right, exactly. I mean, you kind of put it perfectly before, where he doesn't have the best figures in his life, giving him advice and such. And we see that with Technical Boy's interaction with the different variations of world. And the scenes with Technical Boy and Crispin Glover's Mr. World have always been phenomenal. But you got to play around with Danny Trejo, Dominique Jackson. So what was that like, just having different versions of World this season?
That was lovely. It was so good. I mean, they each bring a very unique own energy to it. I mean, I've said this before, but by the end of Dominique's introduction, there's no question as to who's in charge. That's a hell of an intro. She's definitely got her own gravitas. And then Danny Trejo's Danny Trejo. You know what I mean? So I loved working with him. Again, that's been the unifying factor with any of the worlds in their own unique way. That the one thing that is consistent is I am in charge of this room, and by extension, you. That was a lot of fun to play with. It's not too much of a spoiler to say, but I get to play with Crispin again this season. I get to play with all of the worlds.
That's very exciting.
So it is lovely. I love working with Crispin, particularly as World. It's just been. I still remember working with him the first time in season 1. Some of the scenes. It's the relationship between World and Tech Boy is one of the main linchpins in terms of the character. I love playing with any of the worlds.
I was really scared for Technical Boy in season 2 when he was retired. And I was like, oh, wow, are we seeing him replaced now by new media? Only for then Tech Boy to come back at the end of season 2 as the fandom has named him Quantum Boy. Did you originally think that you were going to continue playing that version of the character in season 3, or did you know pretty early on that you were kind of going to go back to the version of Tech Boy that we all love?
To begin with, I honestly didn't know. I knew that there was potential, and the general consensus was or at least the plan initially was that this would be the new version of Tech Boy that he had upgraded, evolved, etc. But there's no need to go too far into it. But in terms of quantum computing, they need to be run at very high temperatures. They're cooled a lot, and it's an incredibly unstable system to run. And the upshot of that, running off the back of that, was that it didn't work. That it's too unstable. It's part of the reason he was wearing that the white suit with these like artificial. Essentially, they were conceptually based off artificial cooling tubes. That's just a little costume note. But yeah, relatively early on, from the moment I went into the writers' room, it was very, very clear that it was like, no, this upgrade sort of failed, so they've had to revert to something in between. So that was nice because it meant that rather than approaching, which would have been, I suppose, fun in its own way, but rather than approaching the character as this sort of fresh, bright-eyed, brave new world, I'm learning everything for the first time version, I get to go back a little bit to, the Tech Boy that everyone has known for the previous 2 seasons. So that was fun as well. But some of the upgrades are stuck, like it all bleeds into itself. I know that's not particularly clear. Every version of the character influences the next, and so they bleed into each other, whether or not Tech Boy realizes it.
I mean, I thought it was a really great explanation. Just Miss World saying you messed up your system upgrade, and it's like, that's good. Right. That's all we needed there.
Yeah.
And episode 1 of season 3 was a great, just kickoff, and we see you going to Bilquish, trying to recruit her again, and her just messing Tech Boy up how she's done this season. It's a great little flashback of Tech Boy running through the woods. It's raining. He gets shot at some point. I kind of thought that it reminded me very much of like Vietnam, like the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
What particularly was that? Was that a flashback of Tech Boys? I'm just curious.
So I'm going to leave this deliberately. Now, I know you want a concrete answer here, but I honestly think it's more interesting if I don't give you one. He was experiencing war. The visceral, emotional, very human sensations of what it was like to be in a war. That very, very reasonably, again, I'm not going to confirm or deny this, but that very, very reasonably could have been a past version of him that experienced that. What Bilquis did do when she sort of started working her magic on him was unlock a bunch of stuff in him that was already there.
Right.
Like all of this stuff that is happening to him, it's not so much that she has infected him with this new pathogen that is changing how he thinks. She is unlocking things that were already there but were locked away. She's unlocking parts of himself. So he's getting some of his memories back. and he's getting some of his empathy that he really doesn't want back, whether or not he even remembers that he had it. So I'm not going to go into specifics into what that specific memory was. It was something that in some way, shape or form, he did experience, and now he remembers.
Yeah, and I totally get not wanting to reveal too much. You got to, act with Yetede, which I spoke with her last week. She's so lovely.
She is, yeah.
Were you happy to do another scene with her in season 3? Because the last time was season 1 that we saw them interact with each other.
I know. Yeah, we didn't get to play at all in season 2. I was gutted. Well, she's lovely anyway, so it's nice to spend time with her. I love working with her. The dynamic between Tech Boy and Bill, they should never be in the same room. They shouldn't. They're totally different energies. I mean, first of all, she's brilliant. So that really helps. But I love the back and forth between those two characters, because I mean, Tech Boy very, very clearly in their meeting, episode 1, goes in knowing for sure that he is in charge. And I love just watching that power dynamic get just redressed so quick. Yeah, it's so episode 8 is the next episode that is coming out. I'm not sure when this will be coming out. I don't know if it'll be after episode 8 when this will be released.
It might, yeah. And I actually also got to see episode 8 previous, so that is a wonderful scene.
Yeah, cool. Well, there you go. Well, what I was going to say, if it's going to be out after 8, then no worries. We get to work together again. We get to work together more. And that scene that you're referencing, that was so much fun to do. I mean, getting to play with a version of your own subconscious, I love it. It was so much fun. It was so good. That was a real straitjacket, by the way. I was really in that thing. Yeah.
Oh man, did you feel claustrophobic at any point while you were doing that?
I kind of liked it. I kind of felt I was basically hugging myself all day. That's how it works. Because, hand underneath your other armpit and hand underneath your other armpit, and then sort of bound. It wasn't super duper. They didn't tighten it up so that it would hurt or anything. But the whole day I was just kind of hugging myself. So I was like, oh, this is fine. I mean, I won't be drinking anything, or, I'll need this off if I go to the toilet. But other than that,
that's great.
Yeah.
That was just such a brilliant scene. I mean, totally unexpected. As soon as it happened, I was staring at my computer I can't believe they just did this in the best of ways. So it was really phenomenal. And that, too, is just leading into so much excitement for Technical Boy's, role in the future. But and you got to work with another actor that you didn't get to work with since season 1, and that being Ricky Whittle.
Yes.
I loved Shadow and Tech teaming up. I mean, and I have a theory, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, but I sat there and said, okay, why are Shadow and Tech teaming up? This has to be because everyone sees how great Bruce and Ricky seem to get along with each other. Is there some truth to that?
Maybe. I don't know. I just, because that was always when we were talking to the writers, even before we started shooting, that was always the plan, that they would have this little sort of buddy cop adventure. Maybe it was. I don't know why. But I'm really glad that did happen. I think they recognized that there would be some real opportunity for some comedic interactions between those two characters, given everything that's gone before. And also, yeah, me and Ricky, we get on so well. I love that dude. That was so much. It was nice to play. I mean, obviously, I'm the one getting, beaten up and stuff, but it was lovely to play with some real fun. To have, I mean, the whole thing's fun. I love doing it. I'm rambling. I love working with Ricky. It was a super fun time.
No, absolutely. I mean, Tech Boy seemed to be having some fun. He thought he was going to shoot some guns at some point until Shadow told him
close.
No.
Yeah, damn it.
That was really great, though. And do you feel like Technical Boy, with interacting with Shadow, interacting with Bilquis, and just everything that he's gone through, is kind of seeing that being even though he is a new god, being on the new god's side of this war is not really the best thing for him?
I think he mentions this when he's working with Trejo's world, but like, how many times have you threatened to, basically discontinue me, shut me down, all the rest of that stuff to get rid of me? I think he's learning that maybe all that glitters is not gold, in terms of, you get all these wonderful promises from the new gods, and they're very shiny, they're very slick, they have all these lovely toys that you can play with, but at the end of it, kind of in central premise of the whole book, you're kind of left after the initial sugar high feeling kind of empty. And I think he's starting to learn that. He's starting to go, okay, I'm actually having a real problem here. And a real, like, this is hurting me, not just people around me or my goals. I am in pain. And the most powerful person I know, God, world, says that they're going to help me. Sincerely, like, sat me down, told me that I matter to them, and isn't doing very much about it. Seems to just be stringing me along. He's smart enough to be like, this isn't, something's not right. And he even touched on this in seasons 1 a little bit, in some of the conflicts with Crispin in season 2 when they were in the bunker. But like, why are I can track where Shadow is. I can track where Wednesday is most of the time if he's not doing some stuff to hide himself, via the backstage. I can find them. I can deploy a team to kill them. Why haven't we just killed these people? There are so many things where it's like, why are you choosing this protracted route to like respect the old gods? Why? We're trying to kill them. Tech Boy has so many solutions that would have worked, in his mind at least, whether or not they, maybe not, because he's somewhat ignorant as to the power of the old gods. But he's a little like, into big talk from world, not very many results, and most of the results he's gotten are because of Tech Boy, or in some way.
I mean, Tech Boy has this great line. To me, I thought it was great, even though it was so simple. In, I believe it was episode 1 of season 2, and Mr. World is saying something, and he kind of just says like, blah, 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 just, fuck him up already. And to me, that's just like so Tech. He's like, why are we going around and around when we can just do things? And he kind of touched upon that in season 3 when he asked Miss World, why are we trying to get the humans help? Why don't we just do this thing?
Yeah, and World said in season 2, through Crispin, when he's talking to the caretaker, he says, this isn't the exact line, but it was something along the lines of, don't tell anyone I said this, but sometimes the old ways are the best, like a knife to the back, etc., etc. And that's something that Tech Boy cannot click in. It's like, why? We have a way of doing this. Why are you paying homage to these old, as he sees it, desiccated, useless worship structures of people we're trying to kill? You are showing a lot of respect to our adversaries, and we could just kill them. You're being far too old world honorable. Why? And that is one of the many questions that Tech Boy has sort of filed away, and they're building up in the back of his head. And then all it needs is that final straw, and the camel's back snaps, and then we'll see where Tech Boy goes.
I mean, as someone who now has read the book, I have my theories on that, but I won't say it on here because I don't want to spoil anything for those who haven't read the book. But I have one little question, kind of like off topic of all the other things that we were talking about. But I saw like last year these photos circulating online where you did a scene where you were dressed up similar to how Tech Boy was supposed to be in the book. We never got to see that.
You saw those?
I did. They circulated, and I was like, oh my God, this would have been so great to see. I mean, did you film a whole scene, or did you kind of just like...
I can't tell you! I can't tell you anything. What I will say is this: look, somewhere in the archives, there is something where I am kitted out like that. That exists. That is in the world. I have some of the material as well, just like from the days that we were shooting that stuff. I don't honestly know if it's going to see the light of day. I'm not sure. But it is there, and it's ready to go back to if we need to again. I would love if that. Look, here's the thing: if once this is all wrapped up, season 4, etc., whenever it finishes, if that stuff hasn't come out, I'll post it. because then by that point, no harm done, you know.
Right.
But until then, I'll have to keep quiet. But yes, that sort of, I can't even tell you what it was about. But yes, it exists.
All right. Well, I'll just keep it in my head, and
I'm
I'll
sorry.
be
I would
waiting.
love
No,
to tell you. You'd like it, but I can't.
it's no problem. What would you say is your favorite flashback of Tech Boy? Because I have to say, 1930s Tech Boy, well, Telephone Boy, was pretty amazing in season 2. Again, didn't expect that. I was like, that's the last we're going to see of Technical Boy. Oh no! And then you're in this like nice suit trying to woo Columbia and all that, and I thought it was great.
That was honestly one of my favorites, just because I've been wearing all my costumes have been wonderful, but there's really like cutting edge vibes in terms of modern stuff. And then I got to go back and do a little period thing, and I loved that. That suit, just as a note, was originally worn by Eric Peterson, who played the caretaker in season 2. Years before in theatre, it still had his name sewn in from like 20 years previously. I just thought that was a nice little sidebar. I loved that one. That was really fun. I shout out especially to early Andrew Koji, the CEO in season 2 as well. I thought that was important with the organ. That has a special place in my heart. Shooting that was a funny day. They're all part of him. They're all important. I had probably the most fun doing the 1930s one. That was so much, and I got to play with Ian. It's so rare that I get to actually say anything to him. I was in the room with him in season 1 once when I got my teeth knocked out, but I didn't say anything to him. And this time I actually got to have a little chat, and that was really nice.
It was nice, and Technical Boy was technically insulting Wednesday, so yep. Part of the course there.
Terrible advice.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I have to ask, the accent that you do for Technical Boy is so like unique, and I was listening to the interview that you were doing with Ricky on a Moon Monday a few weeks ago. How did you develop that accent?
Okay. Sorry to hit the table. I mean, I was practicing the American accent for years before. I was doing kids' parties at one point, and the chap who owned the company said the kids like it if you can do an American accent, because I was like dressed as a Jedi or a superhero. They're like, all their superheroes from TV are American. So that was one of the earlier things, but that was years before. In terms of whether specifically for Tech Boy, a lot of it came from like physicality, in terms of I knew that the character, so this is not always, but most of the time, like the character walks around shorter than I am in real life because of just the physical posture. There's a little bit of hunching, a little bit, the spine slightly rolled, and there's a lot of tension held around the shoulders and the neck and the chest, and specifically a little bit up through the throat. Part of that makes it's just a little the whole time, so it's always a little bit tense deliberately. It's a deliberate choice. So then when that comes out, it's just a little like this the whole, so rather than just being a standard normal like run-of-the-mill, that just sounds like an American bloke, it's like, something, what is, why? And it's sort of because of the physical prep for the character. I wanted to represent in his voice a certain degree of the tension that he was feeling the whole time that he was having to work through, is that he never relaxes. Like he's always sort of balled up, even when he's free and like gesticulating and all the rest of this stuff. Inside, he's very tense. So that's where the vocal tone came from in terms of the pitch. And then other than that, it's just a lot of practice. I mean, we get a lot of American media here anyway from a young age. But the short answer is I just put the time into learning it over years. No,
it was great. I didn't expect it. That you were able to say achieve that, and it just sound completely believable, and not have your normal tone kind of seep into that. I just thought was a really great thing for you to have developed, and it's so Technical Boy now at this point. And before we wrap everything up, Bruce, which by the way, thank you again. I keep saying that for taking the time to speak with me. I saw, again, like a year ago, I think you were doing a project with Musa, who played the Jinn.
Oh, yeah, Mooski, I love him.
Are we ever going to see that come to light? Because I swear I've been looking for it.
Yeah, I know. I think the footage exists somewhere. It was so that wasn't a full-blown project. That was a proof of concept for basically for a film. And I don't honestly know what the stages are at for that. It was fun to shoot and interesting to shoot. That was my first time inside an American jail. Hopefully the last, unless we're shooting there. It was very fun to do. I honestly don't know what the stages are for that, but I had a good time doing it, and it was nice to work with Musa again.
Yeah. And so fingers crossed, that we get season 4 of American Gods and we continue seeing that. Besides that, do you have any other projects that you want to promote right now that we should be on the look for?
No, it's very kind to ask. I mean, at the minute, I'm taking plenty of swings, and we'll see if anything gets thrown back. But no, right now, just American Gods is the one to look out for.
Nice. And one last question, because we are a geeky outlet, I of course have to ask: DC or Marvel? Would you want to play a character in them, and if so, who would you like to play?
Oh, bloody hell. I don't like picking between them. They're both lovely in their own way. Obviously, DC's got a much darker tone. I just watched the Batman trailer, actually, literally just about an hour ago or something. Who would I like to play? Depending on the way that Marvel slice things with the multiverse and how they're expanding with Spider-Man, I'd be interested to maybe look into... I think I could do a good flavor of Harry Osborn further down the line. But I don't know exactly what flavor they're going with the character, and indeed his dad and all the rest of that stuff. But that would be fun. DC wise, who is that? It's kind of similar to Tech Boy in many ways. Who's that gentleman? The one of Constantine's enemies, the representation of chaos. He's a young chap in a suit. I can't remember his name. But that would be a fun character to play with. Look, I mean, there are plenty and there's such a abundance of great material to draw from in terms of characters. If I get a call from Marvel or DC being like, "Hey, do you want to play this character?" I'm going to at least hear them out, no matter who it is. But there are plenty of people to be involved in the Spider-Man universe in some way would be amazing. Just because I loved it when I was a kid so much. It's one of my favorites.
And working with Tom Holland would be so cool.
Yes, it would. It would be very nice. I've met him briefly a couple of times. He's a very polite young chap, nice guy. I like him very much. And from what I hear, consummate professional on set as well. So yeah, it'd be a pleasure.
Well, nice. I hope that certainly happens. Just again, coming from a geeky outlet, love Marvel and love DC, and that would certainly be awesome. But everyone who's listening, please make sure that you continue to check out American Gods. We have a few episodes left to season 3. You can find that on the STARZ app every Sunday. Bruce, thank you again for taking the time to speak with me. It's been awesome, and I can't wait to see where Tech Boy goes from here.
That's no worries. Absolute pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Cheers.